Morning, everyone. This is me snuggling my blanket because, yes, I know it's probably like 65 or what degrees outside, and I'm freezing at the moment, and that's just what happens here. Had a very interesting conversation with my mother this morning, and it lined up perfectly with the video I just put earlier in regards to sharing birth stories with each other. And I don't know how we got into this conversation because I didn't even tell her about the video at all, or the fact that, I was mentioning her about the fact that I was sharing about a birth story, and she went into her birth story, which is exactly what happens whenever you talk to someone about being pregnant or talking about birth stories. And apparently, I had a horrific birth story, and it was interesting listening to her describe it too, because there was no joy or any excitement or anticipation or translation that this was a happy event. The whole recollection of the birth story was how awful it was and how weird I was, and I realized, I went, how fascinating that that was the energy that I came in to this world with. Apparently, during my birth story, I would not go down the birth canal. I had my feet go there, I had my head go there, and I'd put it there and I'd take it out. I put my hand down there once, and it took them forever to try and get them to have me come out. And I guess he tried to do forceps, and he tried to grab my leg and all these different things to help my mom help the baby come down the canal and myself. And I found that very fascinating, that my entrance into the world was, no way, not doing it. And that may be the way it came out, or I was at the right time. Finally, they were able to induce me, and they used forceps, and they had me come out. And I thought, and it was interesting listening to her to have the recollection of that experience, and no insight to what kind of child I would be, or why I wouldn't want to come out, or any kind of It couldn't even have made up a funny story of how I was playing the hokey pokey or anything. And there was nothing like that. It was all came from a position of a bother and how much it put her through, and it was just a really fascinating thing. The one thing that was really cool about the story is, while I was listening to her talk, I realized that I had these chronic nightmares as a child of this man chasing me everywhere and trying to grab. I was always in this dark place and trying to get into these small spaces, and there was this guy trying to grab my legs all the time. And when I grew up, I remember when I was a child, that I'd never stuck my foot out past the edge of the bed because something was going to grab me. There was always something that was grabbing me underneath the blanket, and there was always dark and nasty things under the bed. And not once did I put that according to the fact that I could have experienced that in my birth story. That the doctor, here I'm in my mind not understanding what's happening. I'm having this person invading in my space that I would never really maybe I heard the voice before a couple times. I don't know. But you think about it, that my entry in the world was a forced entry, that I was coming out no matter what. And the doctor was doing their job, trying to get me out, because I guess I was in labor for almost 3 days. I was putting my mom through quite an ordeal. And I'm not trying to belittle her experience, because it was a hard labor. It was a very difficult labor. And I was just me. So, and I'm looking at that birth story and going, well, no wonder I used to have unprocessed feelings about that. I don't think my mother ever talked to me about those experiences. She always told me about the horror story, but not really understood. And when I was listening to a speaker, the president, I can't remember his last name at the moment, but his name is Vishen from Mind Valley. I'm taking this course. And he was talking about how children make meaning situations and events, and they make meaning from those. And that we have meaning-making machines in our mind. And as children, that's what we do. We take this event that's happening, and we bring meaning to it. So in my mind, with all the perceptions of men that I've had in my past, and everything could have all been channeled through that birth experience. Listening to her this morning going, well, I can understand why I would think that a man would have to be able to force myself, and I wouldn't be able to, like, I remember one time in a relationship that I had this feeling that if a man told me what to do, that I couldn't say no because I felt like I was powerless. Well, that would make sense in regards to my birth story if I had a doctor. And my mother loved this man. He was an extremely gentle doctor, and he was very funny and normal. Like, there was no malicious intent in the birth or anything like that. But now looking at it, going with that birth story, holy smokes, has it answered a lot of questions for me of my dynamic and my paradigm around men. And it was just, it just blew my mind because I had these, like I mentioned earlier, I had these chronic nightmares as a kid where this guy would be out to get me and trying to grab my feet and trying to take me out of something, this place that I got myself that was really small and safe. And wow. So I sit there and think, now what do I do? Get angry at the doctor? Well, it's all his fault that I had these 50 years of this crap in my mind. Oh my gosh, like maybe I should get after the doctors and go on a tirade of how awful doctors are. Maybe I would have had him better if it was a feminine doctor. But the issue was not the fact of the event. The issue is that nobody had the idea or the understanding when the time came for those kind of situations where I came up to understand that what meaning I made of that situation. And you know what? They would have no idea of the meaning I made. And it's very interesting that my mom told me I was very shy when I was little and I didn't like to be exuberant and outgoing and open. And well, if I came in that way and I had a meaning that, okay, the people are big and gruff and mean and they do things and they force you to do things you don't want to do, will make total understanding. But the situation was, in my case, that it was just a gentleman doing his job. And sometimes even with some of the things my mom did, it was just my mom being a very, I don't want to use the word broken because that's not a good way to put it, but what tools did she have in regards to being a parent? There's just been so many things that have been opening my mind lately, but I just realized that put a whole bunch of meaning then. Because if I would have taken that event, that moment where I didn't understand a whole bunch of things, and I started piling all these different kinds of other events that had the same kind of similar meaning, I created a situation in my life where I was afraid of men. And now I was and guy people that know my personality will be like, oh my gosh, Jax, are you serious? Because I've always been a very in-your-face, confident girl with women, have masculine tendencies and all that kind of stuff. And even when I feel it's like it's been a cover-up, it's been a reaction to the fact that I never felt safe around men, never felt safe around my dad or anything like that. And here, all that experience could have been all done by that meaning-making of what happened when I was born. Instead of telling it of a story that I was playful and a play story or a birth story about how this guy was trying to get me out, coax me out, and do whatever he could. Like, you could have made it any kind of birth story. Instead, it was how this guy was really, everybody was so frustrated and how awful it was. And she wasn't making it sound awful, but that was the energy that came on, that it wasn't a good experience, that I frustrated her. And I thought, well, the feeling that I got was, wow, I have this really interesting experience coming out, and this woman is very frustrated with me because I'm not communicating to her what's going on. And I thought, well, isn't that fascinating? I wonder if there's any of you that you can link down back to your birth story, something that you carried, a pattern in your life that carried all the way through. And it just so happened that was your story. And it'd be very interesting to see it that from the adult point of view, watching in a room, if you would have thought the exact same thing. Or if it was just a comedy of errors. And I don't know. But it sure gave me an answer. It sure made me realize that where I could have started making that meaning-making machine and making a sense of my world, and that I took, because my dad, that wasn't an extremely positive environment, and I thought, well, you know what? I could have lumped them all in a childlike thing and just started right from that get-go as a blueprint. And all it was a doctor trying to do his job. So I'm thinking that, wow, maybe there's something more to this story in regards to how I can uncover more thought patterns that are taking me down a road where it leads to unhappiness and bitterness, and that's not the road that I want. I want a different road. So thanks for listening. But I thought maybe if this is somehow open up anyone else's idea, not necessarily about your birth story, but how you could be having this whole pattern in your life that you're thinking is an actual traumatic thing, when you're realizing that what it was just an event in your life, and you may have to just look at it a little bit differently. It's just food for thought. Food for thought. Have an awesome day.